Chapter 4: The Optimization of Gideon Vance. The air in the center of the room didn't just open, it tore. It was a swirling vortex of deep violet and black, a wound in reality that pulsed with a mana density so high it made Alara's vision swim. This wasn't a portal. This was a drain. Ilara's new analyze skill fired involuntarily, her mind trying to grapple with the phenomenon in front of her. Target, question mark, question mark, question mark, danger, fatal, class, null. The vortex expanded, swallowing the light, the sound, and finally, Ilara herself. She didn't feel like she was falling, she felt like she was being rewritten. The portal snapped shut with a crack like thunder. Ilara Thorne was gone. System, baseline, stasis breached. Waking target, Gideon Vance. The fall didn't kill her, but the silence nearly did. Ilara hit the ground in a crouch, daggers drawn, her muscles coiled for the impact of wet dungeon moss or the crunch of bone. Instead, her boots squeaked against a surface that was impossibly smooth. It was white, harder than marble, and cold enough to burn through the leather of her soles. She held her breath, listening for the void stitcher or the howling of the cleft. There was no dripping water, no chittering of spiders, no groan of settling earth. There was only a low, rhythmic thrumming, like the heartbeat of a sleeping god, coming from everywhere at once. "Where?" she whispered. The word was swallowed instantly by the sterile air. The room was a box of light. The walls were not stone, but panels of a seamless white material that glowed without a source. There were no torches, no braziers, just a uniform brightness that cast no shadows. It smelled of ozone and something sharp, like the taste of a lightning strike. System alert. Location, the nexus. Sublayer, preservation. Environment, non-magical, sterile. Ilara blinked at the notification. Non-magical? Her mana veins felt suddenly heavy, as if the air itself was resisting her MP regeneration. Before she could process the location, the voice returned. It didn't boom from the ceiling this time. It seemed to originate from the air itself, crisp and terrifyingly calm. Initiating protocol, Genesis. Objective, protect the anomaly during reconstitution. Failure condition, termination of subject. Ilara spun around, scanning for the anomaly. In the center of the room stood a sarcophagus. It wasn't the stone coffin of a draugr. It was a sleek, upright capsule of glass and silver metal connected to the ceiling by thick black cables that pulsed with faint blue light. Inside, through the frosted surface, she could see a silhouette. A man. He was suspended in a dense, clear fluid, motionless. He looked defenseless. He looked like loot. Protect him? Ilara hissed, her mind racing. Protect him from what? As if in answer, a section of the far wall didn't open, it disintegrated. The white panel disintegrated into a cloud of geometric dust, revealing a dark corridor beyond. From the darkness came a sound that made Alara's skin crawl. It wasn't the roar of a beast or the rattle of undead bones. It was the hum of magnetic levitation, precise and soulless. 3 figures emerged. They were vaguely humanoid, but wrong. They had no gears, no pistons, no grinding chains. They were composed of a seamless white ceramic armor that looked like liquid mercury frozen in time. Their heads were smooth domes with no mouths, no noses, just a single vertical slit that glowed a menacing, angry red. They didn't walk, they glided, their feet hovering an inch off the floor. Ilara tightened her grip on her daggers. Constructs, she thought, though she'd never seen Artificer work this clean. High level, maybe ancient tech. She needed information. She was running on fumes. Her MP was critically low from the Stitcher fight, barring her from using Soul Sever or maintaining flow state. She needed to know if she could fight them or if she needed to grab the man in the capsule and run. She focused on the lead construct, channeling a sliver of mana into the skill orb she had just consumed. Analyze. She expected the familiar comfort of a stat block. She expected a level, a rank, maybe a weakness to blunt force or lightning. Instead, the system screamed. Target unidentified. Level null. Threat assessment fatal. Alara froze. Null? In all her years, from the sewers of rank F to the nightmare of the Void Stitcher, she had never seen a null. Everything had a level, even the rocks had durability stats. To have no level meant the thing didn't exist within the rules she understood. The lead construct's head ticked to the side, its red eye fixing on her. It raised an arm, and the white ceramic plating shifted, folding back seamlessly to reveal a hollow barrel that hummed with rising violet energy. It wasn't magic. It felt cold, void-like. For the first time since she was a starving child in the River District, Alara felt a fear that had nothing to do with dying. It was the fear of being small in a universe that had suddenly become vast and uncaring. "What are you?" she breathed. The machine didn't answer. The barrel hummed, and the red light flared. Combat initiated.
Inside the stasis pod, Gideon Vance was experiencing a significant amount of input lag. He wasn't fighting robots, he wasn't fearing for his life. He was floating in a warm, viscous suspension that smelled faintly of lavender and ozone, staring at a holographic menu that had popped into existence about 12 inches from his nose. He tried to blink, but the command took a solid 3 seconds to reach his eyelids. "Okay," Gideon mumbled, the word vibrating through the fluid like a slow-motion ripple. A bubble escaped his mouth, floating upward in a perfect sphere. He watched it go with profound fascination. "I feel buffered. My brain is loading. Please hold." He felt remarkably calm. In fact, he felt fantastic. The terror of the universe ending had been replaced by a fuzzy, cotton-wrapped sense of well-being. If the world had ended, it had done so very comfortably. "Okay," he continued, his thoughts drifting like clouds. "My subconscious has a surprisingly good UI design team. Very clean lines, minimalist." The text in front of him wasn't the stark, terrifying red of the error messages he'd seen in the chamber. This was sleek, inviting, and bordered in gold filigree. "Welcome, user, Gideon Vance. System state, reconstitution. Physical shell, compromised. Initiating character creation sequence." "Character creation," Gideon said, a hysterical giggle bubbling up. "I'm in a game. The entire Global Institute for Networked Systems has been replaced by an RPG." He waved his hand. The menu swiped left with satisfying responsiveness. "Select race." The list was exhaustive. It scrolled forever. Human, elf, dwarf, orc, gnome, tiefling. It was like someone had fed the entire corpus of fantasy literature into a blender and poured it into a spreadsheet. "I need to be practical," Gideon reasoned, trying to summon the voice of the serious scientist who wrote papers on non-linear optical dynamics. "I need something with high intelligence scaling, maybe a bonus to perception." He tapped human. A submenu appeared. Standard, variant, augmented. Boring, too cyberpunk. He tapped elf. High, wood, dark. Too pointy. I don't have the cheekbones for that. He hesitated. Computer, system, sort by rarity descending. Let's see what the premium options are. The list reshuffled instantly. At the very top, shimmering with a faint, holy luster, was a single word. ASMR. Description: mortals with a touch of the celestial, born of the upper planes, carrying a spark of divine light. Rare, charismatic, powerful. Traits: celestial resistance, healing hands, light bearer. Rarity: ultra rare, 0.01% of population. Gideon's eyes widened. Celestial light? A sustained wavefront with an infinite refractive index? It's literally what I was researching. It's perfect. It's destiny. It's also incredibly cool. He slammed the select button.
A 3D model of himself appeared in the void. It was accurate, painfully so. It showed a 22-year-old with the posture of a shrimp, dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises, and the general physique of a man who considered lifting a coffee mug to be strength training. "Oh, absolutely not," Gideon said, horrified. "If we're rewriting reality, we are not keeping the grad student slump." He found the sliders. Muscle mass. He grabbed the virtual knob and dragged it right. The hologram shoulders broadened, the chest expanded. The arms, previously akin to noodles, developed definition that Gideon had only ever seen on statues in the atrium. "More," he whispered. "We are going for Greek god who lifts, not runner who forgets to eat." He pushed it until the abs were visible through the skin. Perfect. Aerodynamic, robust. He scrolled down. Reproductive morphology. There was a generic size slider. Gideon stared at it. He glanced at the default setting, which was politely average. Well, I mean, who knows what the inflation rate is in this new universe? Better to hedge my bets. He nudged it. Then he nudged it again. Then he thought, why not? And pushed it until the system gave a small, polite warning beep indicating maximum parameter reached. "Optimized," Gideon declared, clearing his throat. Finally, he reached the face. He kept the dark, messy hair. It was part of his brand, after all. But the eyes, the tired, brown eyes of a man who slept in the margins of equations, wouldn't do. He selected a color palette. He found a blue that wasn't just blue. It was the electric, piercing cyan of Cherenkov radiation, the color of light breaking the sound barrier in water. "Let them glow," he murmured, toggling the luminescence option. A little terrifying? Yes, but if I'm going to be an Asimar, I should look like I've seen the face of God and found the math interesting. He zoomed out to admire his handiwork. The avatar floating before him was magnificent. It was him, but a version of him that never pulled an all-nighter, ate exclusively protein and ambrosia, and spent 6 hours a day doing squats. Finalized character? Warning, once confirmed, physical reconstitution is permanent. Gideon grinned, an expression that looked much more dashing on this new face. "Hit it!" He pressed the button. Outside the pod, the blue light in the cables flared from a gentle hum to a blinding roar. Inside, Gideon felt a sudden searing heat as the universe began to knit him a body worthy of his ego. He had no idea that 3 feet away, Alara was fighting for her life to keep his perfect new butt from getting vaporized by a laser.
The red light from the machine's arm didn't pulse. It lashed out. A beam of pure concentrated energy tore through the air where Alara had been standing a millisecond prior. The white floor hissed, turning into a molten slurry. Alara didn't wait for a second shot. She pushed off the ground, her boots squeaking on the smooth floor as she tapped into her dwindling reserves. Phantom step! She flickered, warping 5 meters to the right, becoming a blur of ink against the sterile white. But the machines were ready. Their internal sensors didn't track movement, they tracked displacement. The second construct pivoted with terrifying precision, its arm elongating into a monomolecular blade that vibrated with a high-pitched whine. Alara swung her dagger, aiming for the neck joint. The blade sparked against the white ceramic, not the satisfying thunk of metal hitting meat, but the shrill ring of steel hitting something harder than diamond. System error, weapon ineffective. Physical resistance, 99%. "You've got to be kidding me!" Alara spat, the impact jarring her arm all the way to the shoulder. She flipped backwards as the blade whistled past her ribs, severing a lock of her hair. She wasn't fast enough. The third machine had circled around, silent as a shadow. It struck with a backhand blow, a kinetic pulse erupting from its palm. The force was like being hit by a siege ram. Alara hit the wall hard, her vision swimming in white spots. Her HP bar plunged into the flickering red zone. HP, 340, 1,850. Warning, critical damage. She coughed, tasting copper. The pain was a cold, jagged thing, threatening to shut her down. Her agility, usually her salvation, meant nothing if she couldn't pierce their hide. "Subject identified," the lead machine droned. Its voice wasn't a growl. It was a synthesized grating of static, perfectly flat. Purge in progress. They moved in unison now, a wall of relentless, unfeeling logic. Ilara looked at the stasis pod. The blue light inside was blinding now, the man's silhouette shifting, expanding. Protect the anomaly. She had no mana for Soul Sever. Her shoulder was a useless weight of agony. Her analyze skill was mocking her with null and error. Fine, she hissed, her fingers tightening around her knuckles until their knuckles turned white. She forced herself to stand, her legs trembling. If I can't cut you, I'll break your logic. She didn't use a skill. She used the dungeon-born instinct of a girl who had survived the slums of Oakhaven. As the lead machine lunged, Ilara didn't dodge away. She dropped low, sliding across the smooth floor directly under its legs. But the machine compensated instantly, bringing its energy cannon down to track her. But Ilara wasn't aiming for the machine. She hooked her good arm around its ankle, not to trip it was too heavy, but to pivot herself. She swung her body like a pendulum, heaving herself into the path of the second machine, which was already firing its beam. At the last microsecond, she triggered Phantom Step. MP 15/1850.
Inside the light-drenched void of the reconstruction chamber, Gideon was staring at a floating character sheet with the intensity of a man trying to find a tax loophole. Physical reconstruction complete. Current level 1. Race, Aasimar, ascended. Level 1? Gideon scoffed, poking a finger at the shimmering digit. I have a doctorate, or I was 3 months away from one. Surely that's worth a few experience points. Can I appeal this? Is there a manager? The system did not respond. Instead, it presented him with a handful of glowing attribute points and a blank skill slot. Allocate stat points, 20 available. Okay, let's be scientific, Gideon muttered. If I'm a level 1 in a world where things presumably want to eat me, I have 2 problems. I am stupidly weak, and I am physically fragile. He looked at the stats: strength, agility, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. Intelligence is non-negotiable, he said, dumping 10 points into it immediately. I refuse to be a celestial being who can't do mental long division. Now, for the rest, I can't outrun a cold in this body yet, so mobility is a problem for future Gideon. Present Gideon needs to not be a one-hit point wonder. He split the remaining 10 points between constitution and strength. There, evenly distributed. I am now a genius who can carry his own groceries and survive a stiff breeze, a well-rounded specimen. Select starting skill. Rank, low. A list of generic spells appeared. Firebolt, Minor Heal, Footpad's Grace. Gideon turned his nose up at them. They were derivative. System, can I modify the parameters? I'm an Aasimar. My whole deal is light and refractive indices. Give me something I can work with. The interface flickered, responding to a specific mana signature. A new option appeared, Radiant Shell. A shield, Gideon mused, but let's optimize the geometry. If I configure the light into a hexagonal lattice with a high-frequency oscillation, yeah, that'll do more than just block. It'll refract incoming kinetic energy. He spent 10 minutes programming his skill, waving his hands like a conductor until the shield wasn't just a bubble, but a shimmering geometric masterpiece of golden light. Before he could hit finalize, the screen turned a deep royal purple. Unique condition detected, interdimensional transit. Trait acquired, the Observer's Veil. Effect, your data is your own, grants absolute immunity to the analysis skill from any entity within 20 levels of the user. Information is obscured for all others. One-time settlement bonus, the first anomaly. Effect, plus 15 to all base statistics. Welcome to the new world. Try not to break it immediately. Gideon's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Plus 15 to everything? That's statistically significant. That's an outlier. He didn't realize that a normal level 1 human in this world had stats hovering around 5 or 6. He was effectively a toddler with the raw power of a seasoned veteran. Finalizing reconstruction. Wait, I'm not ready. I didn't pick a theme song.
The beam meant for her chest slammed squarely into the back of the lead machine. There was no explosion, just a horrific sound of matter being unmade. The lead machine's torso dissolved, the white ceramic boiling away into nothingness. One down. The remaining 2 didn't pause to mourn their comrade. They recalculated. The bladed unit lunged for where she had reappeared, near the base of the sarcophagus. Ilara scrambled backward, her back hitting the cold glass of the pod. She was bleeding from the deep gash in her thigh, her movement sluggish. Her HUD was flashing a persistent, annoying red. The energy wielder charged its arm again, the air around it shimmering with heat. The bladed unit raised its arm for a killing stroke. "Any day now, Anomaly!" she screamed at the glass, her voice cracking. She raised her remaining dagger, bracing for a final desperate trade of lives. She was empty. Her vision was tunneling. This was the end of the ledger. Then, the thrumming stopped. The white room went pitch black for a heartbeat, and then exploded in a pulse of pure golden radiance. The shockwave sent the machines flying backward, their chrome frames dented as they slammed into the walls. The energy wielder's arm exploded in a shower of sparks as the golden light short-circuited its core. Alara slumped against the base of the pod. Her breath came in deep gasps. She looked up, her eyes bleary. The glass of the stasis pod didn't break. It vanished. The clear fluid spilled across the floor, steaming as it hit the air. A heavy metallic clunk echoed through the room. The door of the capsule hissed open, revealing a wall of thick white vapor. Through the fog, a foot stepped out. It wasn't Wyon's sickly foot of a dying man. It was firm, glowing with a faint celestial light. Alara gripped her broken dagger, her heart hammering against her cracked ribs. Her analyze skill flickered, trying to process the entity stepping out of the mist. Target, undetecting. Fear, cold and absolute, gripped her. She had survived the robots, but she had nothing left to fight whatever was inside that pod. She watched the silhouette emerge, tall, broad-shouldered, and radiating a power that felt like the sun itself. The anomaly was awake.
The world turned inside out. The warm fluid drained away, and suddenly, Gideon felt weight. For the first time in his life, his back didn't ache. His vision was so sharp, he could see the individual molecules of steam in the air. He stepped out of the pod, feeling like he was walking on air. He struck a pose, chest out, chin up, showing off that geometrical marvel of a backside he'd worked so hard on. He felt like a god. He felt invincible. Then he looked down. Crouched at his feet was a woman. She looked like she had been through a meat grinder. Her shoulder was hanging at a wrong angle. She was covered in soot and blood, and she was holding a broken knife like she intended to perform surgery on his shins. She had skin the color of a twilight sky, a deep, beautiful violet gray, and long white hair matted with gore. Her eyes were wide, glowing with a frantic, desperate hunger for survival. Gideon froze mid-flex. "Oh," Gideon said, his new resonant voice echoing in the chamber. "Hello? Are you the welcoming committee? Because I have some notes on the decor. It's a bit murdery." He looked at the broken, smoking robots behind her. "And I think your toys are broken."
Alara stared. She had survived the slums, navigated the political minefields of the guild, and just 10 minutes ago, she had stared down a 3 mechanical death dealer. She considered herself a woman of iron nerves and practical sensibilities, but nothing had prepared her for what came next. His shoulders were broad enough to carry the weight of a kingdom. His midsection looked like it had been chiseled from granite by a very generous god. And his backside? Well, that level of definition was frankly a tactical distraction. And he was entirely, breathtakingly naked. Ilara's face didn't just turn red. It reached a shade of violet so deep it practically glowed in the dark. Her gaze dropped instinctively, then immediately snapped back up, then, betrayed by her own instincts, did a quick, horrified lap of the maximum parameters he had set for himself. "By the ancestors," she choked out, her voice cracking. Is that a weapon? Or are you just trying to blinding me with sheer audacity?"
Gideon, still riding the high of his new constitution, looked down at himself, then back at the bleeding, purple-skinned woman holding a broken knife. He realized quite suddenly that the privacy glass of the stasis pod was gone. Gideon said, his resonant new voice dropping an octave in sheer awkwardness. "Right. The structural integrity of my previous attire was compromised during the transit. It's a thermodynamic necessity. Entropy, you know?"
"I don't know what an entropy is," Alara hissed, shielding her eyes with her good hand while her injured shoulder throbbed in protest. "But if you don't find a rug or a very large piece of metal to stand behind, I'm going to use my last bit of mana to gouge my own eyes out."
Gideon looked around. "I mean, I have a shield? It's made of light, though. It might be a bit translucent."
"Don't you dare,"
she warned. She thought back to Sarah's parting words at the guild hall.
"Don't die." It had seemed like such a simple request at the time. "Sarah," Alara muttered under her breath, a hysterical edge to her voice. "You didn't say anything about dying of terminal embarrassment. If I survive this, I'm charging the guild double for hazard pay involving glowing genitalia."
System notification. Anomaly stabilized. Sequence complete. Returning subjects to primary layer, the veiled crypt. Wait, I'm still... Gideon started. The white room didn't fade. It folded. The sterile walls, the smoking robot husks, and the puddle of stasis fluid vanished in a flash of violet light.